Shawn Michaels has had a legendary career in the WWE, spanning decades. But which run of the Heartbreak Kid was better? The 90s or the 2000s? See, the best thing about Shawn is that you've got two different characters in one person. You have his younger, flamboyant, high as a kite, rambunctious self, and then you have his older, level-headed, father figure self. He's one of a few wrestlers that legitimately had two full-length careers. Most people don't even have one. The 90s Heartbreak Kid managed to be a dastardly heel and a super over babyface that ushered in a pretty seamless form of wrestling. The 2000s showstopper was a man well-travelled and humbled by his past, whose sole goal was to prove that he had what it took to hang with the changing wrestling landscape.
A young man that's Hall of Fame bound, but nothing to prove. It was pride and passion.
So in this video, we're about to break down both versions into 9 different categories to determine which period was truly his best. Let's get into it. Number 1, star power. The Attitude Era is one of the most important periods in WWE history, where the company bounced back from a record low point to not only great success, but a success that propelled pro wrestling back into mainstream pop culture. The shift towards more edgy, provocative content is a factor, but it's also due to their stars like The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker, and Mankind. Shawn Michaels is part of that group as well, considering his sleazy Heartbreak Kid shtick made him a perfect fit for the new creative direction. He carried the load of a company which could have felt like the world when WCW was beating WWE back in 1995 to 98. He did something not many other wrestlers could do. Shawn stuck with the company when his friends were leaving and carried that company on his back. During this time, Shawn Michaels won back-to-back Royal Rumbles and 2 WWE championships. He was also voted the PWI most popular wrestler back-to-back in 95 and 96. 1996 was the year that Shawn Michaels became a permanent main eventer, and really the only year in his entire tenure with the WWE in which he was the main focus of the company. By 1997, Shawn was at the top, but Undertaker was also at his peak as a champion throughout most of the year. Bret Hart was arguably the top heel until the very end of 1997, and Stone Cold was on the rise. Michaels wasn't actually in the Attitude Era for long, having been forced to retire in 1998. Since his return in 2002, he was never again the major focus of attention. By this point, many of the pillars of the Attitude Era such as The Rock and Stone Cold were on their way out, and WWE needed to create new stars, with the on-screen announcement that the Ruthless Aggression Era had begun. While future stars like John Cena and Batista were still being developed, wrestlers like Triple H and Shawn Michaels ended up having the crucial star power to anchor the era. In the 2000s, Michaels wasn't interested in being at the top of the card. He was largely focused on delivering great matches and elevating the star power of those he worked with. So the winner in this category is 90s HBK. Overall, Michaels went from main eventer who headlined almost every pay-per-view he was on in the 90s to an upper mid-carder who would aim to put over anybody he worked with in the 2000s. He did main event his fair share of pay-per-views, but after 2002, he wouldn't ever capture the title again and was never really the focal point of the company. Saying that, however, it did seem as though he was above the title in his run due to his veteran status. All in all, it's clear that Michaels had so much more star power in the 90s than he did in the 2000s. Score: 90s HBK 1, 2000s HBK 0. Number 2, babyface work. As much as Shawn Michaels was an incredible singles wrestler, his tag team years alongside Marty Jannetty as the Rockers shouldn't be forgotten. The Rockers were an attempt to cash in on the success of the Rock and Roll Express, but ended up becoming a beloved act themselves thanks to their high-flying, pure babyface shtick. In 1992, Michaels would eventually become heel after turning on Jannetty, but in 1995 he would disappear for a spell and return as a babyface, winning his first world title in the process in the classic Iron Man match at WrestleMania 12, and becoming one of the top babyface stars of the new generation era. The WrestleMania 12 main event match between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels was a truly emotional bout for wrestling fans. Both men left it all in the ring for the Iron Man match classic, but the ending where Michaels won his first WWE Championship is the lasting memory. The boy whose dream would come true.
The boyhood dream has come true.
Shawn Michaels was one of the smallest wrestlers in WWE throughout the 80s and 90s. Once WWE was ready to push him in the main event picture, Michaels had the perfect scenario of momentum building as an underdog that proved he could perform at a high level. The WWE Championship win and the general success of Michaels made him a highly inspirational performer to the fanbase. Most of today's WWE stars have claimed that Michaels influenced them to chase their wrestling dream. However, many considered his babyface run in the mid-90s as terrible. Bad booking and presentation made him alienate teenage and adult male fans. When he got to go toe-to-toe with the heels, like in matches with Mankind and Diesel, it was perfect. The rest of the time he was doing strip teases, alleged ex-lovers were talking about how amazing he was in bed, and the announcers all fawned over him and his dance moves.
Shawn Michaels entertaining this capacity crowd. Celebrating.
Vince McMahon was so desperate for Shawn Michaels to be the top babyface in all of wrestling, yet was still behind the times, that he made Shawn Michaels an old school goody-goody babyface with no edge. One of the main problems was that the NWO storyline had begun in WCW and was at its hottest heading into late 1996, which was Shawn Michaels' original run as a top star. That storyline made it even harder to get behind Shawn Michaels because it made the old goody-goody babyface look dated, and cool heels like the NWO with darker and edgier babyfaces like Sting were the new thing. Eventually, this led to HBK turning heel in 1997, as WWE could clearly see that the babyface run wasn't working. In the 2000s, Shawn's second run made him arguably one of the greatest babyfaces of all time. Shawn Michaels returned from retirement in 2002, ending a 4-year absence from the ring. Triple H turned on his former best friend, setting up a storyline of Michaels having a reason to come back into the ring at SummerSlam 2002. The 2000s run of Shawn Michaels saw him perform in a completely different style by becoming a better all-round worker. Michaels was able to work with wrestlers of various in-ring styles and adapted to find success with everyone. Many fans that never even witnessed Michaels wrestle in the 90s fell in love with his work in the 2000s. Michaels played a face the entire time, aside from a short heel run for a few months. WWE didn't want to mess with a perfect thing, since everyone loved cheering for the Heartbreak Kid. The winner in this category has to be 2000's HBK. Overall, Shawn Michaels was a much better face in the 2000s. This was largely due to the fact that he was never pushed to the top during this time, as he would only win the world title on one occasion early in his second run, and held it for about a month. Despite many attempts at trying to win the big one again, he would never succeed, which made fans cheer him on even more, as he was consistently delivering the best match on the card and became the perfect underdog again. Score: 90's HBK 1, 2000's HBK 1. Number 3, heel work. Before he was the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels was a tag team specialist with Marty Jannetty in a tag team called the Rockers. In 1992, Michaels suddenly turned heel on Jannetty, throwing him through a window on the set of Brutus Beefcake's talk show segment, The Barbershop. From there, Michaels became a single star, leaving Jannetty in the dust. The Rockers breakup is so iconic that fans to this day talk about who, in any given tag team, is the Michaels of the team and who is the Jannetty. Fresh off of super kicking tag team partner Marty Jannetty and throwing him through a window, Shawn Michaels embarked on his first singles run as a heel, nicknamed the Boy Toy. With sensational Sherry as his manager and an obsession with staring at himself in mirrors, this era would include Michaels' first singles title win, the Intercontinental Championship. However, this brief period would be the prelude to Michaels' best heel run. After his babyface win at WrestleMania 12, the fans slowly grew tired of him, which culminated with the crowd turning on him at the 1996 Survivor Series in his championship loss to Sid.
And down.
This was one of the first times that the crowd went against the promotion and marketing of the WWE by basically cheering for Sid over HBK. This was even before the crowd turned on Bret Hart for Stone Cold. Shortly after, he went full on heel in 1997, forming D-Generation X amidst his real life rivalry with Bret Hart. DX is maybe the perfect balance of the serious and silly Shawn Michaels. As a co-founder of DX, Michaels was a crude and rude heel, but his extremely attitude era antics alongside Triple H really worked. HBK in the mid-90s was a heel in real life. He was egotistical and people hated him, to the point where fans were trying to come out of the crowd and fight him. Quite possibly, he was the best heel of the entire 90s.
We are the Generation X. You make your rules and we will break them. Yeah.
In the 2000s, when Shawn Michaels joined the New World Order, it felt like fan fiction came to life for many wrestling fans. After all, he was the only member of the clique to never wrestle for WCW. But this was the half-hearted WWE version of the NWO, and being an exclusively WWE guy during the Monday Night Wars made Michaels a weird fit for this ultimately forgettable group. This was the last time we would see HBK as a heel, with the exception of his brief feud with Hulk Hogan in 2005. We only got that short stint with Hogan to bask in the glory of heel HBK. Looking back, it sucks that he wasn't a heel that much during his return, cause damn, he was still a great heel even when holding back. The winner in this category, 90's HBK. Overall, Shawn Michaels' best good guy moments can't compete with his unfathomable betrayal of Marty Jannetty, his employment of Kevin Nash as his bodyguard Diesel, or his stint with stable D-Generation X. It helps that by all accounts, Michaels was a real-life heel, given the myriad of stories about his role in WWE's backstage politics. Late 90s Hard to Deal with Shawn was full of so much charisma and douche charm, and that's why it was unforgettable. Score: 90s HBK 2, 2000's HBK 1. Number 4, athletic ability. In the early 90s, moonsaults and flying elbow drops were a rarity. When Shawn Michaels stepped into the ring, he performed these moves with such fluidity and ease that many call him the greatest wrestler of all time. HBK was clearly better athletically in the 90s. It was before his spinal fusion, so he was much quicker and could do more high-risk moves. 90s Shawn also looked a lot better. He had more mass and it made his height not so obvious. Shawn was younger and the surgeries and injuries hadn't taken their toll in the 90s. However, 2000's Shawn was no slouch, obviously, athletically speaking. There aren't very many wrestlers who retire for nearly half a decade and then come back just as good as they were before. Shawn Michaels made a glorious return in 2002, kicking off an incredible second win for the star that many fans had written off as long gone. But the winner of this category has to go to 90's HBK. Before HBK's back injury, he was technically more skilled. He got very skinny in the last few years and his look was arguably better in the 90s. HBK in the 90s had speed, stamina, and was a great in-ring technician. Apart from these things, he had a heart to put it in a match, and he was considered a freak athlete at the time. And of course, his selling was second to none.
Michaels, no! Shawn Michaels has got to be on Dream Street.
Score: 90's HBK 3, 2000's HBK 1. Number 5, in-ring storytelling. Shawn was a better wrestler in the 90s, but never a good company man nor storyteller. His ego prevented him from giving anyone a boost from working alongside him until Stone Cold Steve Austin at Mania 14. 90's HBK was a once-in-a-generational kind of talent, but when he came back in the 2000s, he was much more mature and he wasn't as selfish, so it just made him that much better even if he was physically more limited. He had a better understanding of the business by that point too. 90's Shawn was an awesome athlete and an even awesome cocky heel, but the 2000s rechristened Shawn was a master of that ring. He wasn't just a freak athlete, but he added passion and storytelling into his repertoire. After returning from retirement, Shawn Michaels changed up his wrestling style and approach to matches with a greater focus on psychology and in-ring storytelling. He was still capable of great athleticism in the 2000s, and he had some great matches in the 90s, but the 2000s was the era of the Shawn Michaels epic. His match with Triple H at SummerSlam 2002 is one of his best matches, and the story they tell in it is a big reason why. Even though you know HBK was physically fine, you buy into every offensive move to his back because you know about the back injury. He was the best at conveying the emotion of an angle or match. On top of that, he could actually go in the ring. Is there a greater emotional moment in the history of professional wrestling than the finish of the Ric Flair retirement match at 2008's WrestleMania 24? And emotional Michaels uttered the famous words, "I'm sorry, I love you," before putting the Nature Boy down for the 3 count. It's a beautiful moment, perhaps one of the most powerful in WWE history. He also did the same during the finish of his own retirement match against The Undertaker. Undertaker does the throat slash, but stops midway through. He looks down at Michaels, who can barely make it to his feet. There's a look of pity on Taker's face as he yells at Michaels to stay down, but Michaels remains defiant. He does the throat slash and bitch slaps Taker. With the furious look on his face, Undertaker hoists him up one more time. Leaping spike tombstone pile driver. The referee counts 1, 2, 3. What an incredible end to a phenomenal career. The winner in this category has to be 2000's HBK. Overall, Michaels showed in his return that he hadn't missed a step in the ring, but he seemed to develop the storytelling element of his matches. He became one of the best storytellers in professional wrestling. Score: 90's HBK 3, 2000's HBK 2. Number 6, matches. Shawn has had, from Pro Wrestling Illustrated, 11 Match of the Year awards. 1993 to 1996 and 2004 to 2010. It's safe to say that in both eras, Michaels was almost guaranteed to have the match of the night every night. In his first run, he was able to get a great match out of just about anybody, including Sid, Diesel, and Mankind. His first run also led to a lot more innovation in the ring, as he would participate in the first ever ladder match in the WWE against Bret Hart in 1992, later made famous in his iconic match against Razor Ramon at WrestleMania 10. He would also go on to have the first televised Iron Man match against Bret Hart at WrestleMania 12 in a 60-minute classic, as well as the first Hell in a Cell match against The Undertaker at Bad Blood in one of the greatest matches of his career. Despite his fantastic matches in his first run, it's crazy to think that we actually got more standout matches and moments in Shawn Michaels' second act. Many argue that it was because he was more mature and wiser, while others argue that it was mainly due to the wrestlers he worked with. Regardless of the reason, there's no denying that his time spent in the ring in the 2000s were more memorable. He still continued to innovate in his second run as he participated and won the first ever Elimination Chamber match at Survivor Series 2002, but he also had some classics with the likes of Triple H, Chris Jericho and Kurt Angle. He even managed to get a half decent match out of Vince McMahon at WrestleMania 22 for goodness sake. His spectacular overselling of Hulk Hogan's offense was incredibly entertaining at SummerSlam 2005. Even when the matches were bad, they were somehow good. That's how great a performer he really was.
And Michaels hit by the impact. Set for the rise. Oh, the big boot. The impact.
This was proved even further in perhaps the two greatest WrestleMania matches of all time against The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25 and 26. If you want a list of the best 10 HBK matches from the 90s and the 2000s, head over to our website and check out our article on the same topic. The winner in this category though has to be 2000's HBK. Overall, although he was phenomenal in the ring in the 90s, his matches in the 2000s were second to none. He had probably the greatest run of WrestleMania matches of all time from 2003 to 2010. Trust me, go and watch all of his Mania matches from his second run and you will not be disappointed. To consistently be that good is unbelievable, and that's why his time in the 2000s has to take it here. Score: 90's HBK 3, 2000's HBK 3. Number 7, mic skills. HBK had awesome mic skills as a heel.
If I go down, I'm bringing everybody with me, and I'm going out in a blaze of glory.
But as a face, not so much. For the most part, 2000's Shawn does beat out 90's Shawn on the mic, particularly as a babyface. But as Shawn turned into more of a heel in 97 and 98, he blows most of his other work out of the water. The key thing here is consistency. Week in and week out in 97 and 98, Shawn was delivering the best promo on the show, second only to Stone Cold Steve Austin.
We'll start showing you some respect. Unbelievable!
This was in part due to his real life rivalry with Bret Hart, where the pair of them really brought out the best. Things definitely got personal, which made it all the more enthralling. And rewatching those old episodes of Raw in hindsight, knowing what would ultimately happen at Survivor Series 1997 is remarkable viewing. Most of the time you didn't know whether he was cutting a shoot or a promo, which made it even more captivating.
I've got 2 words for the Hitman Bret Hart. Suck it!
Now there were a few gems with Michaels in the 2000s, in particular his rivalries with Chris Jericho in 2008 and The Undertaker in 2010 brought out some great babyface work. However, arguably, his most historic mic work during this period has to be his short-lived heel turn against Hulk Hogan. Who can possibly forget one of Shawn's greatest promos ever in 2005 in front of an enraged Montreal crowd? Shawn was always going to get booed out of the building in Montreal, but his promo was just the display of masterful mic skills. The boos were so loud it was sometimes hard to hear Michaels himself, especially when he would ask,
"Who's your daddy, Montreal?"
Again, head over to the website and check out the article of the same name, and we've listed out 10 of the best promos from Michaels from his 90s run and his 2000s run. The winner in this category is 90's HBK. Overall, my opinion is that HBK's heel promos in the 90s are unmatched. Although he had some great moments in the 2000s, during his 97 and 98 run, it made for entertaining viewing each and every single week. The Shawn Michaels and DX segments were must-see, and they topped most of his work on the mic in the 2000s.
Always remember, I was DX before DX was cool.
Score: 90's HBK 4, 2000's HBK 3. Number 8. Feuds. Shawn Michaels' biggest feuds in his 90s run were with Marty Jannetty, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and in particular, Bret the Hitman Hart. With backstage drama, Michaels' feud with Hart would result in the infamous Montreal Screwjob, a kayfabe breaking moment which would spark countless debates and conspiracy theories, while also being a crucial moment in WWE's transition to the Attitude Era. Although these might have been iconic for various reasons, it was the fact that he had so many great rivalries in his 2000s run that make it more special in terms of feuds. Michaels had an incredible 2-year feud with Triple H from 2002 to 2004 that never seemed to run stale. His 2003 feud with Jericho was fantastic, and his 2008 feud with Y2J was arguably even better. Many fans keep it in high regard due to the amount of care put into long-term storytelling and character development. Michaels also had an incredible rivalry with Kurt Angle, which featured 3 classic bouts over the course of a number of months, and Kurt's hilarious Sexy Kurt promo. Finally, to top it off, he had a phenomenal feud with The Undertaker in the twilight of his career, with that second Mania match featuring a sublime story of streak vs career. Do yourself a favour and go ahead and watch the video package prior to their second Mania match. It's simply amazing.
Sweet Chin Music!
The winner in this category is 2000's HBK. Ultimately, the real life drama of Michaels' feud with Bret Hart made it fascinating viewing. But aside from this, the storytelling of his feuds in the 2000s with the likes of Triple H, Chris Jericho and The Undertaker make it that much more special. Score 90's HBK 4, 2000's HBK 4. The last and final category, number 9, Better Person. Despite all of his talents in his first run, you cannot discuss HBK in the 90s without discussing the dark side of him. He influenced the unjust firing of longtime friend Marty Jannetty, buried Vader backstage to Vince McMahon, and allegedly participated in the burial of Shane Douglas. Shawn Michaels would be marred by controversy thanks to all the juicy tidbits of backstage drama and clique politicking that would eventually result in the infamous Montreal Screwjob. His in-ring work during 92 to 98 cannot be questioned, but when you look at the way he would not put people over, I mean, he lost more titles than anyone else without getting pinned. It really does taint his legacy. Shawn's personal issues are definitely a negative against him during his first run. However, his second run added on to his legacy, negating some of the heat from his previous run. His athleticism from the 90s is unmatched, but to see him come back after a horrific back issue, substance abuse issues, and turning his life around into being a better man, as well as still a hell of a wrestler, it's a great story. The winner in this category is 2000's HBK. Overall, he gave a lot more in his second run and put a lot more stars over, such as Randy Orton, John Cena and Chris Jericho. The 90s Shawn, especially when he was champ, just looked unhappy, whereas in his second run, he looked like he enjoyed himself a lot more. Final score, 90s HBK 4, 2000's HBK 5. So the final verdict and the winner of this is 2000's HBK. 90s Shawn Michaels was the most valuable asset in the company at the time, carrying the new generation on his back and dragging it into the Attitude Era. But 2000's Michaels takes the win just because of the more legendary moments that he created, especially with the retirement of Ric Flair and his matches with The Undertaker. HBK in the 90s was more charismatic, more flamboyant and more spectacular, while HBK in the 2000s had better matches, was a better storyteller and a better person overall. While probably being less of a headliner, he definitely became more of a showstopper in his second run. Already lauded as one of the greatest when he first retired, he totally cemented his legacy after his comeback. So that's all folks, so if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Also, let me know your thoughts. Which version of Shawn Michaels did you prefer the most? I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.